Welcome back. This is Petra Lohmeyer from Nevelle, and this is the Win-Win podcast, the new podcast about win-win situations between humans and nature that actually make a profit. And why a profit? Because if we want to actually make a headway into the right direction, we have to involve all big businesses as well, because they need to make a profit. And there are ways of doing the right thing. And today we've got all kinds of right things that I have found on the internet, this time about plastic. Some of them also need a good investment. Others are very, very cheap and can actually be implemented by charities. So let's take a look at the first one. And that is something that I found a while ago on the internet. It's these bubbles that are cleaning up the river or taking out the garbage out of the river. And it's basically just a line on the bottom of the river that where you've got air flowing through, and that air pump can even be powered by solar. And they've used this somewhere already. I'm not entirely sure where this is, but it operates 24/7, covers the full width and depths of the waterway, and allows uninterrupted passage for boats and fish. It's energy efficient, a scalable solution, and has already shown impressive results, collecting tons of debris and helping prevent plastic from reaching our oceans. So this is a really interesting thing, and it comes from a podcast that is, or from a list that is called Civil Engineers World, which is not naturally, where you would go for nature solutions. Now, the next one is really interesting. That is microplastic removal. Small scale, but really effective. So this is a Dutch river here. It just cleaned a river of microplastics using zero filters, zero motors, and only fluid physics. Now, don't ask me how exactly this works because there was no video on there, but you can go to the link. If you go to my profile on LinkedIn, it's Petra Lohmeyer. There aren't going to be that many Petra Lohmeyers on LinkedIn. I'm the first one, basically. You will find most of the posts that I will be presenting here. So obviously, these are from companies that are not my company, but I'm just reporting on them in order to help other people to find solutions either for themselves or that they can build on to show what's already there. And sometimes it just sparks an idea, maybe in a completely different area. So this is microplastic removal in the Netherlands. And I just found out that in London, in the Thames, they also have a plastic pollution problem. Apparently, they've got the biggest pollution problem of microplastic in the world. Maybe in the world, I'm not sure, but it is a huge problem. And that, although they have just cleaned up the Thames, so it is not toxic anymore, there is enough oxygen in there so that seals and fish and otters have come back, but they now have this microplastic problem, which is also a problem for us. Why? Because microplastic, when it gets into the food chain, also gets to us and causes cancer. This is from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. We don't want that. We don't want that in our children, right? So it is important to make sure that no plastic or very little plastic gets into circulation, a little more, and that is what we have, this circulatory system that everybody is moving towards. But we need to clean up what is already there, obviously, and this is one way of doing that. The other thing that I found, which is from a completely different part of the world, apparently, is these floating bits on the river. You can also, I showed you who posted this on LinkedIn. I also shared it. So today is the 11th of August. If you watch this a little bit later, and you will find this, and you can take a look at how this works. It's these floaty bits on the river that keep the garbage from flowing downstream, but the boats can move through it, and the ship can move through it. And then, of course, we've got the huge, large-scale plastic removal boat here, and I think this was a part of an X Prize. X Prize is this organization that has really, really good initiatives and funds these huge prices for for companies that do something good in the world. And that is also for environmental things. Not only environmental things, they also do education for children in Africa and stuff, but they also do environmental things which are really interesting to us. And they do win-win things as well between humans and nature. And this is one of the largest cleanups in history, cleaning up this plastic patch into the ocean that we all have heard about. And of course, it's not just about us and the microplastic that gets into our food chain from that through the fish that we eat, but also a lot of animals are either entangled in this stuff and die a painful death, or they eat it and also die a painful death because then they starve to death. And we've all seen the pictures, so I've not used the most graphic ones here because I don't want to upset people who are sensitive to this and who actually like animals, but it is a problem, of course, right? So it is really important that somebody does something about it, and they do. We've got also solutions at source because that is really what we want. Of course, we've got the recycling bit, that we take the plastic that is already out there and recycle it. But we also have new solutions now to make plastic from things that are actually natural. Use the natural uh, mechanism that nature has provided to recycle. So we have algae that can actually be eaten. These edible water orbs, they're really interesting. You see in this ad, you see people eating these things, and they want to make plastic out of that in future, which is really interesting. Of course, the oil industry isn't going to be particularly happy about that because they're not going to make much more money with that. And interestingly enough, this is the second podcast. In the first podcast, I already had one of those guys in there. You can always tell when they've been quite likely paid for the post. But if somebody who's very far right or very far left or very frustrated or from all kinds of different hate movements, which is this, just make sure that you actually get paid for the post that you make. I will turn off the comments here. If you want to post this on, you want to post hate things, just make sure you get paid by these people because you're quite likely going to be used by companies who are not your friends, who are probably completely against you, but who want free advertisement. And they're using you and they're manipulating you in order to get that. And they're very good at that. I've seen that a few times now. But do whatever you like. It is a free world. I'm not the one policing this, but I have turned off the comments simply in order not to distract people who really want to do the right thing, who really want to see these things work, so that they can look at this without and get inspiration and get ideas without being distracted. So this is the edible water orbs. And then we've got a double whammy, another X Prize, the removal challenge, the carbon removal challenge. And that is actually a really interesting one because it is carbon removal and plastic replacement, apparently. So if you take a look at the text underneath, I'll zoom in for myself a little bit to be able to read this better. So let me go to at least 100% here. So it produces consumer plastics from algae oil and addresses the massive economic forces that drive deforestation, for instance, protein and palm oil production. So this is really exciting. It is actually doing several things at once, and it is one of those huge X prizes, which means it's going to be at a really large scale. So the future can be really excited if we focus on the things we want and not the things we don't want. Everybody in personal development tells you that that is actually what you should be doing, because if you focus on the things you don't want, that's what you'll get. So let's focus on what we want and drive towards that. Are you in? This was Petra Lomer from Nevelle, and I hope to see you next week.